start cranking. Get that bang, girl. Get it going. Get that energy. So, taking it off. All right. So welcome.
Hey, girl.
To the Alexandria Show. I'm Alexandra, and today we have Maddie Madison, also known as Mads Taz. And if you are in Boston, you probably do know her. She is a master SoulCycle instructor, but she is also so much more than that. She has a podcast. She does everything. I kind of shy away from the word influencer because I tend to think that sometimes like people associate an influencer with someone that doesn't have something to back it up, where I think you have what backs it up. You know what I mean? But
I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it explained that way, but that's like actually I think why it has like a negative stigma to it. It's kind of like when people use the word entrepreneur.
Totally. Yeah. It's like you're selling something that you don't actually understand, you know, where I think that you got the goods to back it up. So for people who don't know you, give us like a little elevator pitch. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Maddie. I worked, I guess like the Judy Blume version of my story is I went to school in Nashville for entertainment, music business. I moved out to LA, did the Hollywood spiel, worked a million gajillion jobs. Like the stories, I sometimes don't even believe them. And then I got super burnt out in marketing, advertising, entertainment, like digital, whatever. And I went and started to work as a manager at SoulCycle. I rode the bike all the time.
And that was in LA?
Yeah, out in LA. And I decided to audition for SoulCycle. I made it into the program. They sent me to Boston. I officially became a soul instructor, and that's kind of like the rest is history. And since being in Boston, I've just built this brand around myself. I'm still like kind of flabbergasted by it, honestly, but just really just dove in and created this awesome community, and the podcast and everything kind of has just evolved over time to be this thing now that
I love it.
I am.
That's awesome. And you are from here originally, right? Like your family's here?
Well, yeah, I grew up in Rhode Island. So not far from Boston. But yeah, smallest state and one of the smallest towns in the country. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So I had asked Maddie if I could give her some talking points, and she actually asked not to have them, which I love.
Whenever I speak on panels or on anything, I'm like, don't tell me, because then I'm gonna have like a rehearsed answer. And oftentimes, like I always say, like, do it messy, because if I'm thinking about it and I'm thinking what I want to say, it's never gonna come out as good as it would have if it was just like, ooh.
Well, so my goal was to say, so I had given Maddie these talking points, but something that she doesn't know I was going to bring up.
I don't know anything.
So she doesn't know anything though, was that I actually wanted to start with talking about the first time that we met. But actually I would say more appropriate, the first time that I interacted with you. And my venture would be that you probably don't remember this.
Probably not.
So before I ever went to SoulCycle, I was and am still a member at Equinox. And there was this yoga instructor, Adina, who I always took her class at Equinox. And she taught Mondays. She's crazy. I love Adina.
Took her class. I literally took her class maybe a handful of times. So like you're going to talk about a time where you saw me maybe, and I'm going to know the exact time.
Okay. So Adina still teaches yoga. She's just not in Boston. She's in India now. But I took her class every Monday religiously, and was just like totally into it. And so I was outside the classroom waiting and like chit-chatting with another regular, and in comes who I know now as Maddie. And we were kind of talking like, oh, I can't wait to get my butt kicked, you know, like by Adina, this and that. And like I said, who I now know of Maddie is like, well, what are you talking about? Like, get our butt kicked. You know, I thought this was a yoga class. Like, I need to relax. And we were like, oh, well, like it is a yoga class, but it's like a power yoga class. You know, it's a really kind of like a more intense class. And she was like, well, you know, I teach 3 SoulCycle classes a day, and like I need to relax, and this is my time to stretch. And I kind of was a little, to be honest, like put off by your comments. Cause I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to tell you. This is the kind of yoga class it is.
You're in the wrong place.
I was like, this might not be the right class for you then. And so I was like totally put off, and I was like, oh, okay. And at that time, SoulCycle was pretty new in Boston. So I knew of it, but I had never taken a class yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was my first interaction with you. And then, I could like, it's Boston, it's a small city. So like, I hear people taking your class and like talking about how awesome you are. And, fast forward years later, I finally get into one of your classes and I'm like, holy shit, this girl's amazing. The energy that you bring into the room. And so it was something, so it's kind of twofold things I want to talk about. One, on my end about judging people without really knowing them, which I think a lot of us can be guilty of. But it was a real moment for me where I was like, okay, like you think you're not judgmental, but here you were, and you judged this girl that you didn't know, and for what, And so that was a really big moment, in that regard. And two, the other thing that I want to talk about is the energy that you give to your classes and what that's actually like. And I think there's a lot of parallels with me as a hairstylist that, we give a lot and it's very different, I'm giving a lot one-on-one for 10 to 12 hours a day, and you're giving a lot one on 60, multiple times a day, multiple times a week. So I'm curious, one, your reaction to that.
It's so funny because I've had several interactions like that have happened where like people have met me like outside of the element, or they like took my class when I played like a random playlist and they were like, I hate her. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, like, okay.
But I also like low-key don't give a fuck. So it's like, meh. But I guarantee it was like a night where I probably taught 4 SoulCycle classes in a day and like just needed to go like cry in yoga. And that, so the fact that my energy came off like that is like, it makes sense. Like I wouldn't like me either, but not having experienced my class or what it would be like teaching my class 4 times in a day, that makes sense. So can't really get too hard on yourself for judging, because I probably came off like a fucking psychopath. You're probably like, this girl is like,
I was like, whoa.
You're like, yeah, you should probably leave. But like, and I mean, I can see how that is. And like, I definitely, it's like very fritzy frantic. Like when you give so much of yourself, it would be like the equivalent of you literally doing 10 heads a day and then going to like a party and like someone asks you to like braid their hair, or like, I don't know what would trigger you in that sense, but like same kind of thing, I guess. Or like if you, it's like, I guess that's like a trigger for me when I like work out all day and I give all day and then I go to think I'm going to do something relaxing and it's not. And I can compare it to, I remember one day on my day off, same scenario. I got invited to this like yoga thing with like Bumble, and I'll never forget. And it was yoga sculpt at Core Power. And I literally woke up on my day off. My body hurt so bad. I think I taught like 18 classes that week. And I walked in and they were like, it's yoga sculpt. And I was like, you've got to be effing kidding.
You're like, no.
And I did it, but I was like, no. So,
no, and I do. And that's exactly it. Like, and one of the things that I know I love so much about what I do is that I get to connect with people and have those relationships. And I love giving, but I always compare, like, I don't like to be so, like when people are like, oh, go have small talk somewhere. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't want to have small talk with people. Like I'm done. I'm over it, And so what are some of the things that you do? I'm curious, one, what do you do to kind of channel and get that energy for classes? Because for those of you who haven't taken a class, one, I'll say go to experience it for sure. But yeah, what do you do to pump yourself up? And then what do you do to protect your energy when you're outside of class?
Yeah. So what I do to relax, I take a lot of baths. Baths are like my jam. And if you know me, that's like, and you follow me, then you know that like I'm always like posting, like throwing things in there, and like I think last night I emptied I emptied the bath salts into the tub to this like quote from the movie Blow. It's like when what is that main actor?
Oh, Johnny Depp?
Yes, thank you. When Johnny Depp is like
Yeah.
same thing in prison, I was like, yeah, like I do weird things like that, but I take baths like all the time. And it was funny because I was talking to my dad this morning. He's like, I don't think I've taken a bath in 20 years. And I was like, honestly, that's psychotic because it's the best thing ever. And to be honest, like I'm not great at conserving my energy. I usually go into like burnout or hit a wall or like literally end up in the ER. So I'm probably not the best person to give advice on like how to like relax or what I do to decompress because I honestly don't do a lot of it. And I would say that's my biggest blind side or blind spot when it comes to what I do.
What do you do to get yourself, like, are you just always amped, or what do you do to get yourself amped up for class? Like, do you feed on the energy of the people that are in class? Is it different every time?
Yeah, it's different every time. I always explain it like it's like having a good tennis partner. And I said this the other day. Some classes literally feel like you're hitting the tennis ball and running around to the other side and you're playing tennis with yourself. And some classes feel like you're playing, you know, Federer and it's bananas and like the energy is just spiking back and forth. So as much as you can bring to the room, like you can only bring so much. And then at another point, like the vibration has to be met. And you can know, I'm sure you can attest to even different activate classes. Like when the room is vibrating this or this, there's only so much I can do to tilt it because it's one of me and 60 of you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something too that like I know that was aware before quarantine that I needed group fitness. Like I feed off the other people. I mean, it's even like not having someone on the bike next to you. Sometimes you can feel like not as much energy, but that's something that's been really hard for me working out on my own. Like, yeah, I can push myself, but it's just not the same energy level of when you're in a class with everybody. But one of the other questions I have for you that was on social media, because I feel like you share so much on social media. Like how are you strategic about what you like to share, like not sharing parts of your like dating relationship or anything like that, or is it more fluid?
I feel like it's pretty fluid. Scott doesn't like to be on social media, so he's not on social media. That's something we're working on. But everything else I feel like is usually pretty fair game, just because it's so much part of my life. Like I don't even think about it now. Like when I talk to people and they're like, well, don't you like, how do you, or they like want to pick my brain about how to grow their brand or be on social media, and they ask me questions and I'm like, I've literally never thought about that in my whole life. It's literally just like ingrained into my everyday life. Like it's like a part of who I am now, kind of sort of.
Yeah. So you're just kind of sharing your day to day with everyone, but not making like strategic decisions about it. So no. Yeah. No.
Not at all.
I love that, but I think that's probably what allows people to connect with you, because you are yourself, you are authentic and organic and raw and all those things, and that's what allows people to connect with you.
Yeah, and consistently showing up. I mean, if I posted stories like that were super deep and super raw and super whatever, and then I went dark and then I posted them again, people would be like, what? Like this girl's crazy. But if they actually like, if people actually ride on your journey with you and they kind of like understand all the different kind of parts, then it makes sense. It's almost like watching a TV show or something where it flows and it makes sense versus, and you're like taking them on the journey with you versus just popping up here and there and having it be like this sporadic thing that people are like, I never really know what's going on.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so speaking of that, like how during this quarantine time, I obviously follow along in your journey, so I know how you've pivoted, but same thing with that, like was your pivot to doing, online classes and stuff like that, like was that just very organic, or how do you want to share any of that?
I feel like it's the way to show up for my entire community that I've built beyond the bike. Like, I think I would dare to say that it's your duty as an instructor to show up for your people right now. Who would I be and what kind of leader would I be if I just went dark during this time? And like, I get that everybody has different headspace and maybe some people need to do that. But if you don't show up for your people during their greatest time of like need for you, which I would argue this is one of them, then that's going to that's going to show when we do go back to normal. I use quotations, like whatever that means. And we do go back to SoulCycle, or we do go back to doing all the things we do, like how you show up for people during this time is going to directly affect your relationships moving forward, I think.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that
I said this the other day too, and I wrote it in a post, like, I don't love like working out. And B, I don't love working out and doing it to a camera. Like if I wanted to be a like fitness instructor online, I would have did it 10 years ago when I was living in LA on the beach. Like, okay. So like, and also being what you do, being what I do it for the energy in the room and the relationship we create. Right now, my relationship is with my phone. I feel nothing. I get nothing out of it. Like it's really not rewarding, and it feels super thankless right now. And the only thing that makes it somewhat rewarding is knowing that on the other side of this, if you're just like building those relationships in hopes that everybody comes back.
Yeah, it continues to show up, like in the, like to your point, like in whatever that normal may look like. Do you, because I know you're a really big, like write down your goals and write down your visions. Do you like to share that stuff publicly? Like, do you have a grand vision for your long-term career?
Yeah, I want to work from anywhere in the world from Wi-Fi, which I could probably do right now, but I love SoulCycle so much. Like like every time I think about wanting to leave or wanting to transcend my business differently, like I can't leave. Or I'm not ready to. Let's put it that way. I don't know when that time will be, but it's something I write down every day. Work from Wi-Fi anywhere in the world. And I mean, I have a bunch. I do like a daily practice every day where you write down like your biggest goals for the next 10 years. So
I love it.
You want to hear them? Or
yeah, share. If you're willing to share, a couple, you don't have to share everything, but if you want to share a couple.
Well, some are like really like deep, and some are like kind of vapid. Like one is like snorkel in the Maldives, and then one is another one is beach parties in the backyard while the sun is setting. So I love that. That's awesome. Like would love that. Preferably like in the Strand in San Diego or Marina Del Rey or something like that. Another one I always write down is speak at Rise Business or something greater, because I'm like a huge Rachel Hollis fan. There's just so they range from all different. Teach a rave ride at the barn in the Hamptons.
Love it. Yeah, no, I love it. And I think that that's something that I like personally have struggled with over the years, that sometimes I have these really big goals and I'm afraid to share them. I don't know why. Like, I think something's going to happen to it if I say it out loud. Like, I think someone's going to steal it or for something from me. I don't know. Like, that's not even a thing. Like, you can't steal my goal, but like, there is like, I struggle with that of like, okay, I want to, manifest and make it happen. But then I'm afraid if I say it out loud, something, I don't know what, like there's this thing that I think is going to happen to it or something. Yeah.
So I feel like most of the time people, or we're afraid to say them out loud because we're afraid people will like hold that above our head. Like, oh, well, you didn't do it. Or like you didn't make it happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's something too. I think that in every field, I think it's really easy for people to see the success without all the hard work that went in behind it. And that's something that I know you've talked about even in your classes. People are like, okay, your classes are always waitlisted. Like, I know for me and like all my Activate crew Wednesday mornings, like I still have my alarm going off on my phone Mondays at noon, because I'm like, will be damned if like once classes are back open, like I am ready to book, because at 12:01 that shit is sold out. Okay. Like you gotta get in that class. And, and so people see that and they're like, oh, well, like it must have just come easy to you. Right? Like that's what I know, even in my industry, people like see a successful stylist and they're like, oh, you're busy or whatever, this and that. Like, oh, well, it's easy for you. And it's like, well, no, it's not easy. I just worked hard for it. And so, I don't know if you can just speak a little bit to that, like about your journey and how you built your brand.
I think it took a while, like anything else, to grow. Like, I don't think I was the best right out the gate. I think that it took a while to figure out like what I liked and who I was and how to connect with people. I definitely knew that social media was going to play a huge part in connecting with riders, and like that would transcend to I guess, inside the studio. And it was the best way to make everybody feel like seen, heard, and appreciated on like outside the room, because like you can only do so much in 45 minutes to an or an hour, whatever it is, when there's 5 people. But it's like, if you're following up with people online, or if you're following up, there's just so many ways that I'm like, well, how did you get successful? But to your point, like, you know, my class wait list, whatever, in Beacon Hill, nobody really remembers 4 years ago when I talked to like 6 people in a 4:30 p.m. time slot at Beacon Hill. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, sucked.
I can't imagine. Like,
no, it was awful. It was awful. Or like, even I used to teach in Chestnut Hill and no one would take my class. So it's like the way you do, like, it's like the way you do anything. It's just a consistency thing. It's like, if you hit a tree in the same spot a million times, eventually it's going to fall. Like, and that is hard, and it takes a lot of work, but over time you grow and you evolve and your people find you, and then that word gets out. And then depending on the way you stroke those relationships, be it with going to coffee and doing this and the pick your brains and all the extra stuff, like not just showing up, teaching and leaving, it's all the extra stuff that people have no idea about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And so like, what is your why? Like, what kept you showing up to those classes with 6 people?
Like, I just wanted to be the best at soul. Like, I was like, I don't know. I bleed yellow. I don't know why. Like, it's just been, it was just always what I wanted. And it has been, and it still is, even during this. I'm like, how do I show up and serve the company? I just love the company. I just believe in it. So I think I just always knew, like, it has to get better, and this is just the due process, and it sucks right now, but I got to keep working, and hopefully it will pay off.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, because I feel, you know, that I keep drawing parallels between our industries, because I do think there are a lot of parallels. But like, you know, as a stylist that was starting out, it was like, I remembered going through like all my same routines with my client. Even if I had one client that day, it was like, I did everything to the level that I should be doing it, you know, going through all my due processes and everything like that. Yeah. And it was so hard in the beginning. It's like so much effort. And the more you do it, it's like the easier it gets, and like the easier it gets and the easier it gets, until, I don't want to say autopilot, but like it starts to become ingrained in you. Yeah. And it starts to become a little bit easier, you know, as stuff is coming. And I think that, but it's awesome. It's really awesome to watch. It's inspiring to watch. And so, you know, I know that you do give so much, but I hope you do know that people do genuinely appreciate it. You know, the community that you build, even like, you know, our Activate crew, like there's a whole like side Instagram chat of those people, and they're like, you know, and they've all been supporting each other through this. And so that's something that I think you should be really proud of, that you have, you know, the ability to bring people together and to cultivate those communities. And so I, you know, have no doubt that obviously will achieve all of your goals and in all the best ways. And so I'm excited to keep watching your journey. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there's any kind of last nuggets you want to leave people with before we wrap it up.
Not really. Just that if you're starting, don't compare where you are right now with someone else's end. Like I call it, someone else's end game. Because I think especially right now during quarantine with like all the consumption of social media, and it's like, I always say, like, what are you consuming? Like I mute a lot of people that I would consider direct competition, because that doesn't serve me.
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. That's something that I started doing a while ago, because it was having more of a negative effect on my mood, and it would hamper my creativity, I felt like.
Exactly. So it's like consumption over creating over consuming. So it's like, if I'm consuming all this and then comparing myself to these people that I'm not and may never very well be, then that's just taking away from what I can create and serve my community with. So I I think that would be like my biggest tip is I think so often when people are brand new instructors or starting something right out the gate, they just expect to have it all work out and be where like someone who is starting right now is not going to be where I am. They haven't put in the sweat equity. They haven't put in literally the blood, the sweat, tears, all those things. So
yeah. And if I may,
literally,
yeah.
actually those things. So it's like, run your own race. And it sounds so simple. It's simple. It's not easy, right? Run your own race, stay in your own lane and steady the course and ground yourself in what you're doing and your abilities and keep at it. And you will get to where you're meant to go. And that path could change. Like, I don't know. It could have changed for me years ago. Like maybe, you know, I talk about it all the time. Had I made the Patriots cheerleading, would I have gone part-time at Soul and never became a senior instructor, a master instructor? So it's like, you just don't know.
Yeah. And that you said something that I say all the time. Whenever I'm teaching a class, I always say exactly that. It's not easy, but it is simple. And if I may add on to what you were saying, not only should you not compare yourself, but also not try to be someone else. Because if someone is like, oh, well, this is what worked for Maddie, I'm going to just emulate everything she's doing. But you won't ever be successful trying to be someone else. You have to be authentic to who you are. And that's what's going to allow people to connect and resonate with you.
Yeah, there's a magazine article in the bathrooms at SoulCycle, and I don't know if it's in every SoulCycle, but it's like pulled from some magazine, be it People or whatever, and the CEOs or the former CEOs, creators talk about it, SoulCycle instructors as everybody has a superpower. And me, because I'm like a total nerd, I think of everybody as like, if we were a team, like, and like I showed up and I was like a certain character, like I like say like I'm Storm. Storm already exists. Like we don't need another Storm on our team. We need a Captain Marvel or whatever. I'm like mixing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we don't need another Superman. We need a Spider-Man or whatever. Like, and that's how I think of especially instructors, but also like that can go for anything in any business. Like we don't need that other person because that other person already exists. And I'll never forget, I was speaking at, I was at a Gabby Bernstein event or another panel or some other event. And somebody said, well, I want to be that girl. And they were like, well, that girl already exists. So you can't be her. It's like, you have to choose another. It's like, I think of like choosing players in a game, like choose another player.
I love it.
Already taken. And we don't need another person like that. And we need you because you have superpowers that you're not even aware of yet. And most of the time that you haven't been tapped into yet that the world needs. So you need to show up in your glory and in your superpowers. Otherwise you're doing the world a disservice.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it was, I heard her interviewed on Ed Milet and now I'm forgetting her name, but the Everything is Figure Outable.
Marie Forleo.
And one of the things that I loved about her message was that, and it's kind of what you were along the same lines, what you were saying earlier, that if you're not doing, it's almost like you're robbing the people that need you, you know? And I think that that's really valuable. If like, forget about your fears and forget about your bullshit and forget about whatever you have on your, like, think about how you could be serving other people. And if you're not doing what you're called to do, that you're actually robbing that of them. And I think that was a big framework shift for me, you know, because if you're like afraid to do something, it's like, well, forget your fear. Like, what about all the people that you could be helping?
Yeah. A funny story about that, or similar story. I for some reason in the past year started to get really bad performance anxiety with SoulCycle, where I feel like you remember, maybe you were in the class where I got viciously ill and activate. I had to leave. I like put you guys on a hill. I left. I got the sickest I've ever gotten, like pretty much in my life. Spare the details. Came back in, finished the class, and after that, I was on this series of like anxiety, like I'm gonna get sick in the room, I'm so scared. Like it was like this whole thing. And it still happens every once in a while. It's usually triggered by somebody visiting from out of town, or feeling like I need to overperform, or feeling like other instructors from either other markets or other studios, like just feeling like I'm being like judged in my safe space is a big trigger for sure. And I was particularly terrified this year of teaching the turkey burn, which was so funny because when I first became an instructor, I would have like murdered to teach a turkey burn. I would have freaking murdered somebody. And here I am being like, whatever. And I'm afraid. And I remember I reached out to Trent Shelton, and he sent me a voice note back that was very similarly aligned with what Marie Forleo said. He was like, stop thinking about you and think about other people, like how you can serve other people, because you're being selfish in your anxiety, thinking it's about you when it's really about them. Yeah. And I mean, he said it a lot more eloquent, like really cool and coachable. Like I probably sound really dumb right now.
No, it does. It makes so much sense, and it does resonate.
Over and over, and I kept playing it over and over, and I went and I taught turkey burn, and people were like, that was the best class you've ever taught, hands down, ever, forever and ever, all time, probably until they make me teach another 90 minutes.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say. And I was at that turkey burn class, and I brought my sister, and I think it was my sister, and I dragged her to a couple more classes since then, but it was, I think, her first SoulCycle class ever, you know?
That's
and so
also really
what's that? I know, right?
Taking 90 minutes was like a last good.
I know. Well, I always joke, me and my we get along fantastically, but we're very different. And I always joke, she likes to ride bikes that go places, and I like to ride bikes that go nowhere. So that's she's,
I feel like you told me that.
Yeah. So it wasn't that, yeah, but it was awesome. So it wasn't that I didn't, think she'd be able to do the 90 minutes, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah,
but like from a consumer standpoint in that class, like, no one would have known that you were feeling that.
Yeah.
Which is so.
And like 90% of the time, no one does know that. And the same in your business. Like you could be having the worst day ever. Like you like literally don't want to be there, and people won't know. Like I've said my dad's like my rock and my confidant. Like when I feel like I can't do it, I call my dad, and I'm always like, I'm getting ready to do like another Oscar winning performance. And it's not saying like that's not what we do all the time. And I'm usually pretty upfront for the most part with my classes, and like they kind of like can tell, but like I'm never like weird about like I'm gonna be like really dark in my music or like but I feel like sometimes you have to like, it is a performance, like you've got to perform through it if you're like not feeling it. Like I said, when there's 6 people in the room at 4:30 at Beacon Hill when we first opened that studio, like
no, absolutely. And that's why like my website and my brand is the Alexandria Show. It's not because I think like, oh, it's all about me. It's because I know like that's how it came to be, because I'm like, when I show up for my clients, am I authentically myself? Absolutely. But am I putting on a show? Absolutely. Like, because I'm working, and you came here for the best version of me. You didn't come here to hear about like the crap that's going on in my life. And at one point in my life, I remember asking my therapist, I was like, is it healthy that I'm able to like completely turn this off and like show up? And that's what she said. She's like, no, it's called compartmentalizing. And it's actually a really great way of coping. And I was like, because there's so many days I can tell you, I like show up to work and I'm like, hey, 10 hours later, I'm walking down Calm Ave, bawling my eyes out, because I can finally like let it out, whatever it is in that moment, but so I totally resonate with that, with what you're saying, but there's something to it.
We work very front facing, hospitality, dealing with like, I don't want to say like dealing with the public, but dealing with very personal, like order table, like, what do you want? Like, you have to be like, oh my God, like, this is the best experience you're ever going to have. You're going to eat the fast food. Like, you have to turn it on. So,
yeah, no, definitely. That might just get a little bit, but yeah, that's why I know when I have bad customer service, I don't tolerate it. Cause I'm like, sorry, you're in the customer service industry. You came here, you got to show up. I showed up all day. You better show up right now. Like, I'll get so heated if I'm like at a counter somewhere. Like, I remember one time at Best Buy, I like lost it. And I'm like, their job is to show up and give me customer service. And whoever I was with was like,
you pulled the side of you that I pulled at Equinox. I was like, I gave her a yoga class and I really need to relax.
Yeah. They're like, yo, you need to chill.
They're like, yeah, you clearly do need to relax.
Oh, this is awesome. It's been so nice chatting with you. Tell people, if they don't already follow you, tell them what's the best way to get in touch.
So my Instagram handle is Mads Tads, MADDZTADDZ at Mads Tads. That is pretty much where you can find my website. You can join my email list. You can listen to my podcast, Mads Tads Beyond the Bike. that can bring you to my website. That's basically my hub. You can slide into my DMs because I answer literally all of them like a crazy person.
I know. I'm like, God bless you. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know how she'd be responding to me so quick.
Yeah, so that's where you can plug me. You can also just like Google me, and I probably come up with my SoulCycle and all that good stuff. So
love it. Awesome. And obviously I'll link everything and do all that good stuff, but I appreciate your time. I know that it is sacred and valuable. And so I really appreciate you spending this time with me. And
I adore you very much. So
thank you. I look forward to continuing. And yeah, like I said, I'll link everything. Oh, do you want to talk about Tribe Fearless?
Yeah, I just launched an 8-week program. It's immersion mostly for women, I'd say. I always feel really bad when I leave like the guys out, like kind of like when I made the crop sweatshirts, the merch, and all the guys were like, what the hell, Maddie? But like, I feel like I primarily speak to women. It's an 8-week course where we're basically doing mindset, goals, meditation, all the tips, tricks, and little tidbits I've learned along the way that I incorporate in my everyday life to help me show up as literally the best version of me. So I'm launching that the next few weeks. And
awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Like if anybody wants to know anything else, they can just send me a voice.
Slide on over. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, we look forward to continuing to watch your journey, but you're inspiring. You are a force. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just want the mood to be right. Keeping it low in the night, yeah. So long since I get a glimpse of a light. It's blurring out my eyes. Oh, we should open up a window.